Mr. Geoffrey Clifton-Brown.
Madam Deputy Speaker, thank you for allowing me to catch your eye in this important debate on farming, of which we've heard words of wisdom for no less than 2 former Secretaries of State and a number of other colleagues. Important points have already been covered. I start by declaring my declaration of interests as a lifelong farmer, so maybe I have a few points that I can give to the House. Madam Deputy Speaker, we've had an uncertain few years with COVID-19 lockdowns and the war in Ukraine contributing to a fluctuating global economy and a huge spike in energy prices in 2021. That, together with inflation we've experienced domestically, has meant for many farmers an unsustainable pressure on their businesses compared to 2019. Farm input cost inflation in 2023 stood at 42%, with wholesale energy prices 1.5 times higher. These disruptive events have exposed several vulnerabilities relating to the UK's food supply chain and self-sufficiency. The UK has seen changes over the years influenced by various factors such as agricultural policies, technological advancement, globalisation and environmental concerns. We have become increasingly interconnected with global food markets, relying on inputs for a significant proportion of our food supply. And whilst this provides access to a wide variety of year-round foods, it also exposes the UK to supply chain vulnerabilities, as seen during the events of COVID and Brexit and the war in Ukraine. In 1984, the UK's overall food sufficiency was 78%. In 21, it was 60%. Today, the nation is only 18% self-sufficient in fruit, 55% in vegetables, and 71% in potatoes. We surely should produce policies that starts to increase those self-sufficiency in those commodities. Declining self-sufficiency coupled with supply chain problems abroad has resulted in occasional gaps on our supermarket shelves. Due to the cost of living pressures, consumers show signs of trading down to cheaper proteins. The trend for 2022 has shown volumes for beef down 6% and lamb down 16%. In November 22, growers' cost of productions have increased by as much as 27% in the preceding 12 months. UK egg production fell to its lowest in 9 years and is down 12% in 1 year alone. The cost of feed for those producers has increased by 28%, and the price of a pullet has increased by 22%. Back in 2022, I contributed to a debate on national food strategy and food security. At that time, we were discussing regularly in the House issues of energy markets with costs trickling down to consumers. The same conversations were not happening as often regarding the cost of food and the impacting rising costs were having on people's budgets, although I did warn in that debate that rising food prices would become increasingly an important issue to the public. Food and energy prices are highly regressive, causing more of those on low incomes to pay much more as a percentage of their budgets than those higher up the income scale. Recent studies have suggested that up to 1 in 7 people in the UK had reported going hungry due to the cost of living. Therefore, securing our domestic food supply should not only support British farmers, but help bring costs down. Greater certainty from the food supply chain and government are needed. This can be encouraged through various means. Long-term certainty on accessing seasonable labour, the so-called SAWS scheme, mentioned by several of our former speakers. Greater productivity investment, mentioned by the Minister on the front bench in her opening remarks, and more enabling planning policies, measures to deliver growth and bolster food security. Advances in agricultural technology, such as precision farming, vertical farming, hydroponics and genetic engineering, offer opportunities to increase productivity and efficiency in food production. Embracing these food technologies can help boost domestic production and reduce reliance on exports. And I have to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, and to the House, I think farmers are one of the most embracing of new technology sectors of any sector in this country, and great tribute to them for that. Reforms that prioritise sustainable agriculture, support small-scale farmers and investment in research and development can improve self-sufficiency in food production. This might include payments for sustainable farming practices, incentives for local food production and regulations that promote food sovereignty. At the NFU 24 conference held on the 27th of February, the Prime Minister announced the new annual UK Food Security Index to capture and present the data needed to monitor levels of food security. The Farm to Fork Summit, which he held annually beginning in Downing Street last year, and a £15 million fund to tackle food waste from the farm gate. Work I have done through my role as Deputy Chair of the Public Accounts Committee has examined the environmental land management schemes in some detail, and we pressed hard for an annual report to Parliament on the goal to produce the Strategy Food Index, which will help this House to keep a track on how our production to obtain self-sufficiency is going. We've got to be very careful, I would say to the House, how much grade 1 and 2 types of land we take out of food production for environmental use, especially the areas of ecological worth, tending not to be in those high land grades. So I think we need to be really careful about that. Examples at the moment of thousands of acres being taken out in Lincolnshire for solar farms and windmills of very high-grade land is surely unsustainable in the long run. And I would say to the House, as I said in that debate way back in 2020, there will come a time when we need to produce as much food in this country as we possibly can, because with global warming, as the temperature rises, it will be the temperate areas of northern Europe that will be able to produce more of the food that is needed in the world to feed people. Payment have been the cornerstone of UK agricultural since the war, aiming to keep food prices down. And compared with some of our major competitors like France and the US, where I've just visited with the PAC, where some of the supermarket prices I noticed were double that of our own supermarkets, highlights the impacts of our subsidies in keeping food affordable domestically. However, relying solely on importing cheap food from around the world, while reducing payments to farmers, even for well-needed public goods, is unsustainable. We've seen in recent weeks, starting across Europe, farmers protesting in Brussels, also in other European capitals, and last week in Wales. And I'm not surprised that the farmers in Wales are outraged at their Labour government's emphasis on the environment over agriculture, with plans to commit to having trees on 10% of their lands and another 10% as wildlife habitat. Good as though these things may be, to actually, if you're a small farmer already struggling on the breadline, to have 20% of your land taken out, seems to me that they have, in the Welsh Government, no consideration for the loss of jobs and livelihoods that this policy will produce. While British farmers are held to an incredibly high environmental, animal welfare and food quality standards that I indicated to my honourable friend from East Suffolk, we must not allow our trade deals with other countries to undercut our farmers with low-quality, cheap products. Equally, as we have to look to the long-term health of our nation's food, that it is produced with high standards which benefits consumers, and therefore we must do what we can to maintain them. Modern agricultural practices, including intensive farming and monoculture, have raised concerns about environmental sustainability, including soil degradation, water pollution and biodiversity loss. The pollution of our rivers in the UK, as my honourable friend again for East Suffolk mentioned, is a huge challenge. There are problems with agriculture, with runoffs and nitrates and phosphates, and we have eventually to come up with a plan that allows farmers to apply these nutrients to grow their crops, but at the same time doesn't lead to unnecessary runoff in our river. And as she mentioned, action to help reduce pollution includes a plan for water which would provide £200 million for funding through slurry infrastructure grants. Water companies, of course, play a crucial part in the pollution of our rivers. Now, I am delighted that it was a Conservative government that introduced the Environment Act, which obliged water companies to install meters on all of their outlets so that we can actually see whether they're adhering to their environmental discharge conditions. I'm particularly delighted to have obtained a grant from Thames Water for Anthony St Peter's sewage works in my constituency, which is one of the most egregious outlets of sewage, and this is going to be worth several £1 million and has been budgeted for. Equally, I have had similar confirmation for sewage works in Morton and Bourton. Food production to produce cost-effective, wholesome food is vital for every single person in this country. However, it must be grown on an environmentally sustainable way, whether that's taking steps to ensure cleaner rivers or reducing carbon by increased and improved methods of production. At the same time, it is incumbent on the government to ensure that farmers, who are the ultimate guardians for the countryside, are properly rewarded for their onerous work, often trying to combat adverse weather conditions. And I strongly support the government's buy local government. If Madam Speaker will allow me to give way, and I shall increase my time a little bit, I'll happily give way.
Thank my right honourable gentleman for giving way. Just very briefly on that point about adverse climatic conditions, does he agree with me that there are real concerns across the sector, including community-supported agriculture and other farms in my constituency, but Canalside in particular, that are facing really heavy, because of the heavy rains, really heavy soils, unable to plough the soil, and that's going to affect yields and the timing of their crops?
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman who's only just come into the debate. I haven't had time, but we've done a lot of work in the Public Accounts Committee on the work of the Environment Agency. I think they could do much more, not only to promote new flooding schemes, but actually to maintain their existing flooding schemes, which would help protect a number of farms and houses. So I strongly support the government's policy of buying local. There are only two ways that farmers can continue in business. Either they get payments for public goods and benefits, or a cost that reflects the cost of production. And I have to say, towards the end of my speech, it is slightly disappointing that the government hasn't done more to encourage all supermarkets, and there are some good ones and there are some bad ones, to be fair, to pay prices to the farming community that actually reflect the cost of production. And I think the government could do more through the Groceries Code adjudicator to ensure that this is the case. DEFRA has committed to ensuring contractual fairness between supermarkets and farmers, ensuring that supermarkets must meet certain expectations, including paying on time, paying what they agreed, and vitally being paid at least the cost of production. This is important to ensure that are healthy and sustainable for our food supply, and the hard-working who produce it continues in the long run. Thank you, Madam Deputy.